My parents gave my brother everything: tutors, a $30,000 car, and dad's company. I was the forgotten son. Until I became a millionaire and exposed the secret they buried for years. It is strange how certain memories stay inside you forever. The smell of chlorine on a summer afternoon. The quiet scrape of a cereal spoon against a bowl. The hollow feeling of standing in your own house and realizing your parents had forgotten your birthday. My name is Jake. I am 27 now, but when I think back to the first moment I truly understood that I barely existed in my own family, I was 12 years old. It was the morning of my birthday, a Saturday, and I came downstairs expecting something small, maybe pancakes, maybe one of those cheap balloons my mom used to tie to the back of the kitchen chair when I was little. I was not expecting a parade. I was not expecting anything expensive. I just thought someone would remember. But there was nothing. No pancakes, no card, no balloon, not even a casual happy birthday tossed over someone's shoulder. My parents were too busy getting my older brother Ryan ready for his tennis match. He was 17 then, full of swagger, wearing his varsity jacket like a king wears a crown, talking non-stop about some regional qualifier he was absolutely sure he was going to win. My dad was zipping up Ryan's gear bag like it was a briefcase full of gold. My mom handed him a protein bar and kissed his forehead. I stood there in the hallway, waiting and watching, hoping one of them would turn around and remember me. Eventually, I said it out loud. "Hey, it's my birthday." My mom paused for barely a second. "Right. Happy birthday, sweetie," she mumbled, not even looking up from tying Ryan's shoes. Shoes he was completely capable of tying himself. My dad did not say anything at all. He just looked toward the door and said, "Come on, Ryan, let's beat traffic." And then they left. That morning, I sat alone at the kitchen table and ate cereal by myself while I looked out the window at the balloons in the neighbor's yard. They were probably for their kid's party, bright colors swaying in the wind like proof that somewhere nearby, another child was being celebrated. That was how it always was with Ryan. Everything in our house revolved around him. If he had a soccer game, we all went. If he had a tantrum, the whole world stopped. If I got an A, I got a quick, "well done." If Ryan got a B+, it turned into a full celebration because he had worked so hard. My parents poured everything into him. Private tutors, sports coaches, music lessons, even a public speaking coach when Ryan decided he might run for student council. I was the tag-along, the afterthought, the extra chair at the table. If Ryan was a first draft, being constantly edited, polished, and praised, I was the scribble in the margins that no one bothered to read. By the time I reached high school, the imbalance was impossible to ignore. Ryan got a $30,000 Jeep for his 18th birthday. Brand new, silver, custom leather seats, a bow on top like we were filming a car commercial in our driveway. My dad handed him the keys with this proud look on his face, and everyone clapped. I was 16 then. I did not even have a bike that fit me anymore. My old one was a rusty hand-me-down BMX with a broken brake and a chain that slipped every few feet. When I asked once if I could get a new one, my dad said I did not need it because I was not really the outdoor type. But the real kicker came when Ryan turned 20. My dad gave him a job, just like that. "Come work with me," he said. "Start learning the ropes." My dad owned a mid-sized construction supply company. It was not flashy, but it was steady, and he had built it from scratch. He was always talking about legacy, about the future, about how a business was something you passed down. Apparently, that future only meant Ryan. Never once did my dad ask if I was interested. Never once did he sit me down and say, "Jake, do you want to learn this too?" By then, I was already working part-time at a bookstore after school, saving for community college, trying to build some kind of future with whatever scraps I could gather. I remember overhearing my dad talking to my uncle at a family gathering. He said I was not business-minded and that I liked to keep to myself. He said it like being quiet automatically disqualified me from ever being part of the family plan. I kept my head down. I studied hard. I learned to code. I built websites on an old laptop I bought off Craigslist with money I had saved myself. I did not expect praise anymore. I did not even really want it. I just wanted freedom. Still, every once in a while, the little digs would slip through. My mom once told me I looked scruffy when I showed up to a family dinner after pulling an all-nighter on a freelance project. My dad laughed and said, "Well, not all of us are born with hustle like Ryan." It was like I could never be enough. Not loud enough, not charismatic enough, not impressive enough, not worthy enough. I moved out at 20 and never asked them for a dime. Ryan, on the other hand, stayed at home well into his 20s. No rent, utilities paid, meals cooked, laundry done. A revolving door of girlfriends who always seemed vaguely annoyed to be sitting through our family dinners. He would roll his eyes whenever our aunts asked what he was doing these days. "Just helping Dad run the show," he would say, like he was the heir to an empire. Meanwhile, I was taking online classes, building apps at night, and turning small freelance gigs into something real, something mine. They did not know that, though. No one in my family really asked. They assumed I was scraping by, probably still working at the bookstore, probably living some small, quiet life they had already assigned to me in their heads. It was easier that way. Let them think I was average. Let Ryan think he had already won. But a few months ago, something shifted. It started with my aunt, my dad's younger sister. Her name was Denise, and she had always been sharper than the rest of the family gave her credit for. She invited me over for coffee one Sunday, just the two of us. I showed up expecting casual small talk, but she looked at me over her mug and said, "Jake, you look good." Like, good. What's going on? I do not know why I told her. Maybe because she was the first person in that family to ask me a question and actually wait for the answer. Maybe because I was tired of shrinking myself. I told her about the app that had taken off. I told her about the buyout offer I accepted, the one that left me with more money than I had ever imagined. I told her I had quietly invested in a few rental properties, started 2 more ventures, and was technically a millionaire now. Not because I was flaunting it, just because it was true. She blinked at me, stunned. "Does your family know?" I shook my head. They never asked. And I was not planning on telling them. Not until the family barbecue. The barbecue was one of those long-standing traditions my parents treated like a royal event. Every summer, they hosted a massive cookout in the backyard. Aunts, uncles, cousins, distant relatives, family friends, neighbors who somehow became honorary relatives. Ryan was always the star of the show, walking around with a beer in his hand, cracking jokes, talking loudly about business deals he did not understand, or how he and Dad were crushing it at work. I usually stood by the grill or helped the kids with their games, out of the spotlight, as usual. But that year, things were different. That year, I did not arrive in my usual beat-up sedan. I had given it away months earlier. I pulled up in a sleek black Audi, understated clean, not obnoxious, but unmistakably expensive, if you knew what you were looking at. I wore a simple, tailored outfit, nothing flashy, but sharp. I brought a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. And I watched amused as heads started to turn. Ryan's eyes narrowed the second he saw me. I saw his jaw clench, but he said nothing. Not right away. People began asking questions. "Where have you been, Jake? You look great. What are you up to these days?" I gave vague answers. Just working, keeping busy. Nothing too exciting. I could feel Ryan watching me like a hawk, probably trying to figure out why his quiet little brother was suddenly getting attention. Then my cousin Julia asked the question directly. "So what do you do, Jake? Like, for work?" I smiled and took a sip of wine. "Tech stuff," I said. "I sold a couple of apps, invested a bit, nothing huge." Ryan laughed loudly, the kind of fake laugh meant to pull the room back toward him. "Yeah, sure. Jake's the next Zuckerberg." I shrugged. "No, I just play it smart. Quietly." That word quietly did something to him. I saw the flicker in his eyes, like he understood I was saying more than the sentence itself. He did not blow up right then. Not yet. But the stage was set. What happened next would tear the family wide open, and it all started with a single innocent question from Aunt Denise, asked just loud enough for everyone to hear. "So Jake," she said, "are you planning to take over your dad's company someday?" I did not even get the chance to answer. Ryan did. He did not let the question breathe. Why would Jake take over the company he scoffed, practically laughing, as he stood a little straighter, beer sloshing slightly in his hand? He's never lifted a finger for it. "I've been working with Dad for years. I know the clients, I know the vendors. Jake's just doing whatever it is he does online. There was a beat of silence. I did not flinch. I just looked at him, eyes steady, lips neutral. But inside, something cracked. Not snapped, not exploded, just cracked like the slow split in a frozen windshield. You see it spreading, you know it is coming, and once it starts, it is never going back to what it was. Aunt Denise blinked. She glanced between us and said, "I just thought maybe Jake had been doing something worth talking about too." "Oh, I'm sure he's busy," Ryan added with a forced chuckle. "But let's be real. Jake's never been the business type. You said it yourself, Dad." My dad had been standing by the grill like some king at his post. He turned slightly and said, "Ryan's been a real asset. He stepped up. He's responsible." There it was again. The invisibility cloak thrown over me with such casual ease. But this time I did not stay quiet. I had not come to that barbecue to stir the pot. I had not planned a speech. I did not want drama. But there are only so many times you can be erased from your own story before your voice finds its way out. "I've been busy building something too," I said calmly. "It just didn't involve asking Dad for a job." A few heads turned. The cousins nearby stopped poking at the chips and salsa. Ryan snorted. "You mean your little side projects?" "No," I said. "I mean the startup I sold last year. The one that paid for my condo, my car, and a couple other things." My mom's head jerked up. "You bought a condo?" I nodded. "Downtown. Paid in full." Ryan's smirk faltered just slightly. "Wait, you actually made money off one of those apps?" "More than a little," I replied, keeping my tone light. "I just don't talk about it much. Wasn't really the kind of thing anyone seemed curious about." My dad gave a polite, confused laugh, like he was not sure whether this was a joke. "You're telling me you bought property with what freelance money?" That was the first real sting. Not the question itself, but the disbelief in his voice. He sounded like I was a child claiming I had built a spaceship in the backyard. "I didn't freelance," I said. "I built and sold a software tool that helps small e-commerce shops automate inventory tracking. One of the bigger retail back-end firms bought it. Then I started a SaaS platform. Now I have 2 small teams and passive income from 3 properties." Ryan's smirk was gone. He stared at me like I had grown a second head. "You're kidding," he said flatly. "Since when?" "A while now," I replied. Silence stretched across the backyard. People looked around. My cousin whispered something to her boyfriend. Aunt Denise was beaming, clearly enjoying the shift in power. But it was not just pride in her face. There was something else there too, something calculating. That was when she said it, loudly and clearly. "Well, if your dad were fair, he'd offer you a stake in the company, Jake. You're the only one who actually built something from scratch." The backyard might as well have frozen over. My dad blinked. My mom looked stunned. Ryan turned a deep, furious shade of red. "You think I don't work hard?" he snapped at her. Denise raised one eyebrow. "You do what your dad tells you. That's not the same thing." My dad stepped in quickly, trying to soften the air. Okay. Let's not turn this into a debate. It's a family party." But the damage was done. Ryan could not let it go. Not after losing the spotlight in what he believed was his kingdom. For the rest of the barbecue, he hovered around me, asking weird questions with a smile too tight to be friendly. "What kind of car did you say you got again? How much did that wine cost? So you actually own a company now?" He was digging, trying to find cracks, trying to find a way to make it smaller. I stayed calm, polite. I did not give him the satisfaction of a reaction. That probably drove him crazier than anything else. Later that evening, after most of the guests had left and the backyard had gone quiet, I went inside to grab something from the kitchen. That was when I overheard them in the dining room, Ryan and my parents. "He embarrassed me," Ryan was saying, "at my house." "It's not your house," my mom whispered, but weakly. My dad added, "We didn't know he'd made money. He never mentioned it before." "Because he's sneaky," Ryan snapped. "You think he just happened to show up in that car with that watch and that smug face? He wanted this. He planned this. He wanted to make me look like some trust fund idiot." I froze in the hallway. Part of me wanted to walk in and set the record straight, but another part of me wanted to hear what they really thought when they believed I was not listening. "You're overreacting," my mom said though. Again, there was no conviction behind it. "I've been here working," Ryan said, "helping Dad with everything. And now suddenly Jake is the golden child because he made a few bucks online, Ryan?" my dad began. But Ryan cut him off. "No, no way. You promised me. I've earned this. The business is mine. He doesn't get to just waltz in and take that from me." Take that from me? Like I was stealing something that had never even been offered to me. I slipped away before they noticed. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, not even from sadness. It was clarity. This was not just favoritism anymore. This was Ryan feeling entitled to a legacy that did not even exist yet. A future he assumed would be handed to him, just like everything else in his life. And I was a threat. A mirror. One that showed him everything he was not. A week passed. Then 2. Radio silence from my parents. No calls, no texts, just quiet tension humming underneath everything. Then one afternoon, my cousin Julia called. "Hey," she said hesitant, "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Ryan went to your dad and asked him to freeze you out of the will." I blinked. "Wait, what?" "Yeah," she said. "He told your dad you were manipulating everyone, that you only showed up to the barbecue to make a scene and steal attention. And he suggested that if something happened to your parents, you'd probably sell the business to the Chinese or something ridiculous like that." I sat there in stunned silence. "That's not all," she continued. "I overheard him talking to your mom, too. He told her that if they didn't protect him legally, he'd walk. Said he didn't want to waste another 5 years just to have you come in and inherit half the company." It did not even feel real. The same guy who used to give me noogies and steal my Halloween candy was now lobbying to erase me from the family. All because I had dared to succeed on my own. I thanked Julia and hung up and stared at the wall. That was the moment everything changed. I had tolerated the jokes, the jabs, the years of invisibility, the backhanded compliments, the favoritism. I had swallowed every forgotten birthday, every dismissed achievement, every time they looked past me in favor of their loud, flashy golden boy. But trying to legally erase me was different. That was a line. And I do not care how dramatic this sounds, something in me snapped. Not with rage, not with violence, with purpose. I was not going to fight Ryan with yelling threats or family drama. No, I was going to do it the same way I had built everything else in my life. Quietly, strategically. But I would not be the only one revealing secrets, because Julia was not the only one who had heard things. Aunt Denise had a secret of her own, and she had been waiting for the right moment to reveal it. All she needed was a spark. Ryan had just lit the match. I do not know what I expected after that phone call from Julia. Maybe a confrontation, maybe denial from my parents, maybe a half-hearted apology, something. Instead, I got silence. Not the kind of silence that heals, the kind that confirms everything you were afraid of. I waited 3 days before calling my mom. She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice a little too bright. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hey," I said. I did not ask how she was. I did not want small talk. "So I heard some things," I began. "About Ryan, about the will." There was a pause, then the sound of her exhaling. "Jake, we didn't want to upset you. Did you change it?" Another pause, longer this time. "Your father and I have been talking," she said carefully. "Ryan has worked very hard at the company. You've made your own way, and we're so proud of you, but the business has always been the plan for him." I felt it in my chest. Not a punch, not a stab. Just that quiet, dull ache that seeps in when a truth you hoped was not real gets confirmed. "I never ask for the business," I said, fighting to keep my voice calm. "I never ask for anything, actually." "I know," she said softly. "You've always been independent. You don't need anything." That was it. That was their logic. I did not need anything, so I got nothing. Ryan needed, so he got everything. Even when he did not earn it. He needed affirmation. He needed attention. He needed money. He needed space. I supposedly needed none of those things. Apparently, I existed to clap from the sidelines. I hung up before the conversation could slide into more excuses. I was not angry in that moment. I was numb. But the numbness did not last. That weekend, I went for a walk. I did not even know where I was headed. I just started moving past brick apartment buildings, little corner cafes, and old oak trees shedding leaves into the wind. Eventually, I ended up at a park with peeling paint on the benches and an old jungle gym that probably had not been replaced since the early 2000s. I sat there with my hands in my coat pockets and watched a kid try to climb the monkey bars while his mom stood nearby cheering him on. He slipped twice. On the third try, he made it. She clapped and he grinned like he had conquered the world. Something in my chest twisted. No one ever clapped for me. But I had clapped for myself quietly in the dark when I closed my first freelance contract, when I sold my app, when I got the email that the wire transfer had gone through. Every milestone, every win, it had just been me. And that was when I realized something that changed everything. I had been waiting for a family that was never coming, waiting for validation from people who had already made up their minds about who I was. I thought success would earn me a seat at their table, but the truth was, I never even liked the food they served. So, I built my own table. It was not easy. It did not happen overnight. But the moment I stopped looking for their approval, something inside me unlocked. I doubled down on my projects. I stopped playing small. I started mentoring young developers. I spoke at tech meetups. I joined a small angel investment group. Every time I helped someone else climb a rung I had once slipped on, it healed a little more of that cracked windshield inside me. And the money came in waves. The second SaaS tool I built took off like wildfire. It was a project management integration for remote teams that happened to launch at exactly the right time. Within 6 months, it was featured in a couple of industry newsletters. Then it got picked up by a mid-tier influencer in the startup space. One morning, I woke up to more than 2,000 new paid users and a flood of emails. That week, I hired a small team, 4 people, talented, hungry kind. We built a culture from scratch. No egos, no golden boys, just people who showed up and gave their best. I rented a small office space downtown. I could have stayed remote, but I wanted somewhere to go, a place that was mine. Every morning, I grabbed coffee from the same corner shop and walked through the glass doors, smiling at the simple decal on the window that said our company name, Lumen Forge. People thought the name sounded fancy. The office was not fancy. It was 1,200 square feet with squeaky floors and a tiny kitchenette. But it was mine. Slowly, the weight started lifting. I was not the invisible one anymore. At least, not to myself. My family stayed distant. Occasionally, my mom would send a text, "Hope you're doing okay," or "Saw something on the news about tech layoffs. Are you safe?" I would reply with a short, "All good, thanks for checking in." My dad did not reach out at all. Ryan certainly did not. I did not even get an invitation to Thanksgiving that year. Julia later told me they assumed I would be too busy. The funny part was, I was busy, but not in the way they imagined. I had taken a solo trip to Kyoto, something I had dreamed about since I was 16. I hiked the Fushimi Inari Trail at dawn. I sipped green tea in a centuries-old temple. I journaled under cherry blossoms even though they were out of season. It did not matter. I was there, living, breathing. And for the first time in my life, I did not feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. But peace did not last. Not when Aunt Denise called me again months later and said, "You might want to sit down." I was in the office going over UX revisions when her name popped up on my phone. I answered casually, "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was tense and controlled. "I know you've been staying out of the drama," she said, "but Ryan is up to something again." I closed my laptop slowly. "Go on." "He's been telling people you exaggerated your success. He says the car is leased, the condo is rented, and the whole thing is some kind of online scam." She hesitated. "And he's been dropping hints to your dad that maybe you should be investigated." I blinked. Investigated? For fraud, or something like that. He says there's no way you made that much money that fast, so it has to be shady. I felt a slow burn rise up my neck. Did Dad believe him? There was a pause. He didn't say anything she said, but he didn't exactly defend you either. I did not answer. Look, Jake, she added, I know you've tried to rise above it, but this is not going away. And honestly, I think it's time. Time for what? I asked, though part of me already knew. For you to know the rest. She paused again, then lowered her voice. Ryan is not just the golden child. He is not even the only son your father built a story around. I frowned. What are you talking about? I probably shouldn't say more over the phone, she said. But there is something your parents never told you. Something they kept from both of you for a long time. My heart started pounding. Why now? Because Ryan is about to cross a line he can't come back from. And I think it is only fair that you know why things have always been the way they are. I looked out my office window at the skyline beyond the glass. Everything felt different, tilted. You busy tonight? She asked. I swallowed. No. Good. Come by after 6. I'll have coffee ready. And Jake. Yeah, bring a notebook. That night, as I drove through quiet city streets toward her house, something in my gut told me that whatever I was about to hear would change everything. Not just how I saw Ryan or my parents, but how I saw myself, who I was, who I had always been, and why I had never really stood a chance in that house to begin with. I pulled into her driveway just as the porch light flicked on. Denise stood in the doorway, waiting for me, holding something in her hand, a folder. Thick, worn, and labeled in my father's handwriting. My full name. Come in, she said, her face unreadable. We have a lot to talk about. When Aunt Denise opened the folder, the first thing I saw was a photograph. It was old, the edges curled, the ink slightly faded, but the man in it was unmistakably my dad, younger, maybe mid-30s. Standing next to him was a woman I did not recognize, blonde, stylish, smiling wide. In her arms was a baby. Denise slid the photo across the coffee table. That's you, she said gently. I blinked. That's not Mom. No, she said. It's not. I stared at the photograph, waiting for my brain to catch up. She is your biological mother, Denise said. Her name was Natalie. Your dad was with her before the life he later built with your mom. It's complicated. The room went quiet, except for the ticking wall clock. She died when you were a baby. Denise continued. Car accident. Your dad was devastated. But Natalie had listed him on your birth certificate, and when she passed, he took custody. There was no fight. Your grandparents on her side were not really in the picture. Your dad met your mom later, and she agreed to raise you. But I wasn't hers, I whispered. Denise nodded. No, and she never let him forget it. I leaned back, heart pounding. She always blamed Natalie, Denise said. She said you were a reminder of your dad's old life. She tried, I think, at least at first. But when Ryan became the child she could claim completely, it was like everything changed. He was the clean slate, the perfect do-over, and you were treated like the leftover. I could not speak. It was like hearing a language I understood, but never expected to be spoken out loud. All these years, I muttered. I thought I was just less, not good enough. But it wasn't that. It wasn't me. Denise reached across the table and rested her hand on mine. No, Jake, it was never you. The folder held more than the photo. Old court documents, letters, a tiny hospital bracelet with my name written in faded marker. Denise had kept all of it. She told me Natalie had once been her friend, briefly, and that she had tried to stay connected after the accident. But my mom pushed her out too. Everything connected to the past had to go. I left Denise's house that night in a daze, the folder tucked under my arm like an ancient relic. I did not cry. Not yet. I just sat in my car for almost an hour staring at nothing while the engine ran. By the next morning, I had made a decision. This would not break me. This would fuel me. If they wanted to erase me from the family, then fine. I would show them exactly how dangerous it was to underestimate the person they had left behind. Not through revenge born from petty spite, but through cold, deliberate justice. The old me was gone, the one who wanted approval, the one who played nice. The one who showed up with polite smiles and harmless wine. The man who walked into the Lumen Forge office that Monday morning was not just a founder anymore. He was an architect, and he was about to build a reckoning. First, I gathered information, not just about my family, but about my options. I did not want to destroy their lives. That was not the goal. But I wanted the truth to have teeth. I wanted Ryan, the golden heir, the entitled manipulator, to feel the weight of accountability for once in his life. I wanted my parents to look at me and actually see me. Not the placeholder, not the quiet disappointment. Me. I started by meeting with a lawyer, a friend of a friend, who specialized in family estates and business succession law. I laid everything out for him. The will change, the manipulation, the attempts to discredit me, the sudden campaign Ryan was running behind my back. The lawyer leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. Do you have any interest in the business itself? No, I said, truthfully. I have no desire to be part of it, but I want to make sure I'm not being cut out illegally, and I want to be protected if Ryan tries to drag my name through the mud. He nodded. Then let's start by getting a copy of the most recent will. If your father was manipulated or if fraud was involved, you may have legal standing to contest certain changes. Over the next few weeks, I built a quiet paper trail. Aunt Denise gave me more background. Emails, notes, even a voicemail my mom had left years ago where she said, "Jake will be fine. He's smart. But Ryan needs this." That was their mantra. Jake will be fine. Ryan needs this. I also started looking into the business. Ryan was not the genius he pretended to be. In fact, the deeper I looked, the more I realized he had been bleeding the company, misusing funds, writing off personal expenses, treating company accounts like his personal wallet. He had even used the company card to buy a Rolex, the same one he wore to the family barbecue. It was all documented if you knew where to look. So I hired a private forensic accountant. 2 weeks later, he came back with a folder of his own, and this one was nuclear. Ryan had been shifting company assets into a shell business registered under a friend's name. It was sloppy, arrogant, and likely illegal. If it came to light, my dad's company could be in serious trouble. Tax problems, fraud issues, possibly charges if they did not act fast. I sat there with the folder in my hands, heart hammering. I finally had it, proof that the golden child had clay feet. But I was not done. I needed one more piece, so I called Julia. "Can you do something for me?" I asked. "Depends," she said cautiously. "Ryan, is he still dating that girl, what's her name, Amber?" "Yeah," Julia said. "They're rocky, but still together." "Would she talk to you?" Julia laughed. "Absolutely. She hates him." Within days, Julia sent me screenshots. Ryan had been bragging in private text, to Amber, to friends, to random buddies, about how he was going to lock me out of everything and claim the family business outright. He joked that I would probably crawl back eventually once my little app money ran out. He mocked me. He mapped out his plan, and he put enough of it in writing to make my lawyer smile without actually smiling. Screenshots, dates, context, everything I needed. With my 3 folders in place, the birth secret, the financial proof, and the manipulation receipts, I began to plan. But I was not going to go in shouting. I was not going to kick down a door. I wanted a stage, an audience, and a moment where no one could pretend they had not heard the truth. The perfect opportunity fell right into my lap. My dad's 60th birthday. He was planning a big party at a private banquet hall. Extended family invited. Dinner, speeches, a slideshow, the whole thing. Ryan was spearheading the event, of course. Julia caught wind of it and sent me the invite. I was not even on the original list, but she added me manually. "This is it," she wrote. "If you want your moment, this is the one." I RSVP'd. Then I prepared. I rented a black suit. Clean, tailored, modern. Not flashy. But when I wore it, I looked every inch the CEO Ryan pretended to be. I had the folders scanned, labeled, and loaded onto a sleek tablet. I called in a favor from a friend of mine, a professional videographer who owed me one. Discreet recording, I told him. Nothing fancy. Just capture reactions. Clear audio. Can you do that? He smirked. Easily. The plan was not to explode the room immediately. The plan was to set the table and serve the truth course by course in front of everyone who had ever watched me sit in silence. Aunt Denise offered to help. She knew my timing. She knew what to say. She would be the one to ask the question just like before. All I had to do was wait. And when the moment came, I would stand quietly, calmly, and show them who I really was. The forgotten son, the silent heir, the one holding the receipts. But the exact second everything started to unravel did not happen the way I planned. Because Ryan, in all his arrogance and his need to dominate every room, could not help himself. He forced the moment. And when he did, I walked through the door he did not even realize he had opened. I showed up to the party 15 minutes early. The banquet hall was polished to perfection. Navy tablecloths, gold-trimmed menus, the faint scent of citrus cleaner still lingering in the air. A slideshow of my dad's life played on a massive screen near the stage. His high school photos, his wedding day, Ryan holding a Little League trophy, Ryan in a cap and gown, Ryan beside Dad at the company. There was not a single picture of me. Not one. I did not feel angry. I did not feel bitter. Not anymore. I felt ready. I found my table in the back row near the wall, of course, and took a slow breath. I glanced toward the entrance just in time to see Ryan strutting in like he owned the place. Amber clung to his arm with a bored expression, her hair perfectly curled, her lips pressed into a polite smile. Ryan was wearing that same Rolex, the one bought with company money. I watched as people greeted him like royalty. Backslaps, handshakes, laughs. He soaked it up, eyes darting from table to table, already scanning for someone to impress. He did not notice me, not yet, but he would. The room filled quickly. Relatives I had not seen in years, old family friends, former coworkers, even a few clients from my dad's company, judging by the branded folders on one of the front tables. Then my parents arrived. My dad walked into a small wave of applause. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, and a tailored blazer sat stiffly on his shoulders. He waved and grinned, looking around the room like a man admiring his own legacy. Then he saw me. Something flickered across his face. Surprise first, then uncertainty. My mom whispered something to him, her eyes narrowing. I held their gaze. I did not smile. I did not blink. I let them wonder. The evening moved quickly. Dinner was served, speeches were made. Ryan gave a glowing introduction, talking about legacy and vision, about how proud he was to follow in his father's footsteps. The crowd nodded along. Polite applause filled the room. Then came the open mic. And that was when Aunt Denise stood. She did not grab the mic right away. She simply raised her glass and cleared her throat. "I've known John," she said, gesturing toward my dad, "since we were kids. I remember the day he brought Jake home. A tiny thing, barely a year old. Scared, quiet, but smart. Always watching. People turned, heads tilted. My dad's jaw tightened. Aunt Denise smiled gently. And I remember thinking, he is going to be the one who surprises us all someday." An awkward pause settled over the room. My mom shifted in her seat. Ryan let out a small laugh, trying to wave it off. Anyway, Denise continued, "Tonight is about family. And family to me is not about blood or noise or flash. It is about integrity. About who shows up even when no one is clapping." She raised her glass toward me. To the quiet ones. A few others raised their glasses too. Hesitantly, curiously. And then it happened. Ryan stood. Okay, he said, laughing tightly. "Let's not make this weird. I mean, we all know Jake's doing great for himself, right? What was it again? An app? A YouTube channel? Drop shipping?" A few scattered laughs came from the younger cousins who did not know better. I stayed seated for 1 second longer. Then I stood. "Actually," I said calmly, "I'd like to say a few words." Every eye in the room turned toward me. I walked to the front, tablet in hand, my suit perfectly pressed, my expression unreadable. Ryan sat back down slowly, arms crossed. I took the microphone. "Thank you, everyone," I began. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I guess I should have known I would eventually have to." I paused and looked at my parents. I have spent a long time being quiet, being careful, staying in the background. And for a while, I thought maybe that was just who I was. The invisible kid, the one who didn't need anything, the one who wouldn't be missed. People shifted in their chairs. My mom stared at the tablecloth. My dad looked away. But I've learned a lot in the last few years, I continued, about who I am, where I come from, and why things have always felt different. I tapped the tablet. Behind me, the projector screen changed. The slideshow of Ryan and my dad disappeared. In its place was the scanned photograph. My dad, Natalie, me in her arms. A gasp moved through the room. My mother's head snapped up. My father turned pale. Ryan muttered, "What the hell?" "This," I said, gesturing to the image, "is my beginning. A truth I only recently discovered. My biological mother, Natalie, she passed when I was a baby. My father took me in. Later, he married someone else. Someone who agreed to raise me but never really accepted me." I turned toward the crowd. I am not saying this for pity. I do not want sympathy. I just want to make something very clear. My silence was not ignorance. It was restraint. I tapped the tablet again. New slide. Screenshots. Ryan's texts. His plan to remove me from the will. His mockery. His bragging. His comments about locking me out and taking everything. The room went dead silent. Then another slide. Accounting records. Shell company transactions. The Rolex invoice. "This," I said, my voice still calm, "is what happens when entitlement goes unchecked. When someone assumes he is untouchable." Ryan shot to his feet. "You planned this, you psycho!" "Sit down," I said without looking at him. The room froze. To my astonishment, he sat. "This is not revenge," I continued. "This is exposure, transparency. I do not want the company. I do not want the house. I do not even want your approval. I built my own life from scratch, without handouts, without shortcuts." I looked directly at my father. "But if you think I'm going to let someone smear my name, cut me out, and move money through a family business while hiding behind a legacy I was never even allowed to be part of, you are wrong." I turned back to the room. "I have already filed a report with the IRS. With the evidence I submitted, there will be an investigation, possibly charges. I have also hired legal counsel to contest any changes made to the family estate under coercion or fraud." My dad finally stood. "Jake, we can talk about this." "No," I said, "we can't. Not anymore. You made your choices. All of you did." I turned to my mother. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, for once unsure. "I used to wonder why you hated me," I said. "Why nothing I did was ever enough. Now I know. And honestly, I do not need to carry that weight anymore." Finally, I turned to Ryan. He looked hollow. Rage and fear mixed behind his eyes. "You always needed the spotlight, Ryan. You needed to be the best, the heir, the king. But kings fall, and when they do, the quiet ones are already building empires behind the curtain." I placed the microphone down on the podium, walked back to my table, picked up my coat, and left. I did not wait for the fallout. I did not wait to see my mom cry, Ryan yell, or my dad crumble. I walked out of that hall and into the cool night air. The door shut softly behind me. I did not feel triumphant. I felt free. The next few months were a storm, but I watched most of it from a distance. The IRS investigation went public. Ryan tried to deny everything, but the records were airtight. The shell company was traced. The funds were misappropriated. My dad's business took a hit, fast. Clients pulled out. Reputations collapsed. My dad stepped down quietly to avoid more scandal. Ryan was removed from the company entirely. At one point, they offered me a stake, a chance to help rebuild. I declined. Instead, I made a quiet donation to a scholarship fund in Natalie's name. The mother I never knew, but whose love I could now feel in the gaps between every cold memory. Aunt Denise stayed close. So did Julia. A few cousins reached out after the dust settled and apologized for not seeing things sooner. Ryan disappeared for a while. Word got around that he had moved states and was trying to start fresh. As for my parents, I have not heard from them, and I do not need to. Lumen Forge is thriving. My team has grown. We moved into a bigger space, one with sunlight, plants, and laughter. Sometimes I walk in and stand at the entrance for a moment, just watching it all, knowing I built it. Not for revenge, not for approval, for me. Because sometimes the best revenge is not destruction. Sometimes it is creation. It is becoming so untouchable, so undeniable, that the people who once dismissed you have no choice but to watch from the outside. And the best part is, they cannot take any of it away. Not anymore, not ever again. I was never the invisible one. They just did not know where to look.